right, so now we're going to talk about how you can actually design custom warm-up sheets that will go with your sheet music and work in tandem with your sheet music to help you structure your fundamental time to match up with your sheet music and get your students concert ready more quickly. So first we'll talk about, how you actually go about building your companion exercises. When I think about building warm-up sheets, I will look at all the different parts of a piece, like the violin part, the cello part, and we'll start looking at what is the most tricky thing there. And we want to create our preparatory exercises for our exercise sheet based on the difficult concepts that are in that music. And so we'll kind of isolate and extract those parts. This is great because we can give those parts to everyone at the same time, and it allows it to all be unison. And students just do better in unison playing. There's strength in numbers, and when everybody's doing the same thing at the same time, then it allows us to really work that section without excluding any section or leaving a section to their own devices. And it also solves the problem of, the violins have the melody the whole time and the cellos never get. Everybody gets the melody because we're all learning the melody together. So that's really great too, because it's getting reinforced. Even if they don't have the melody in the piece, they've still learned the melody, and it's reinforced the melody for the section that actually has the melody. I love these companion exercises. They really are one-stop shops for giving students a one-pager, or maybe it's a two-pager, with all the information they need to prep that piece. So they're like prep sheets. It really is a quick way to kind of emphasize, review, and reinforce all those difficult patterns, rhythms, and melodies that you're going to find in your sheet music. So as you're building your preparatory sheets, you're going to find that whatever you do, you're going to build it the same for every instrument. So whatever you put on the violin sheet will be the same on the viola, cello, and bass sheet, just adjusted for clef and fingerings and all that good stuff. But these are the common elements I tend to include on all my prep sheets. Over time, this has changed quite a bit. The first time I saw someone do prep sheets and I was just blown away was Winifred Kroc came, and she did a session for our orchestra teachers in our county, and I loved how she used prep sheets. And some of the sheet music does come with its own prep sheets, and then I've seen other teachers do it, and these are the things that over time I've discovered work best for my students. So first, I like to include the finger pattern, especially with younger students. If they can see the actual patterns that they're supposed to be using on the string for those visual learners, I think that's really important. And I'll show you what that looks like. Next up is some pitch patterns. What are the common maybe leaps and skips, or maybe there's some funny extensions or something that happens in this piece that happen over and over. What are the common patterns that they're going to encounter in this piece? The common finger, placements and patterns. What is the scale of the piece? What is the key of the piece, and what scale corresponds to that? That can get more and more interesting as we get into modes and some more, obtuse scales, but what's the major or the minor, or is it D Dorian? And that's a great experience too for kids to hear that and hear that it sounds different than a D major scale. So you can kind of get more advanced with that as you go. What is the main theme or melody? And giving that to everybody to play and practice together is a great way to build confidence in the melody and give everybody a chance to enjoy the melody, even if they don't have it in the actual piece. Rhythmic patterns, so tricky rhythms. I love using prep sheets to teach tricky rhythms because, again, instead of having to find where everybody has it in the piece of music, we can all go to, okay, look at your prep sheet, look at rhythm 9. We're all on rhythm 9. We can nail it right then. We can do the counting all together at the same time without me having to write it out somewhere else, or it's all in one place. I love having it all organized at one time. Common symbols and notation, or maybe new symbols and notation that they haven't seen. So depending on the level, there may be some new things that they haven't seen before, like maybe they haven't seen a caesura before, or maybe this is their first time with a fermata, or a ritardando, or a diminuendo, different symbols and things that they're going to encounter in the piece. And then any new terminology or new to them terminology, or maybe terminology that they need to review. So this is all really helpful, I think, to have all these different aspects on your prep sheet. So let's look at some examples for your prep sheet. Here's some examples of what the finger pattern looks like. I tend to put this at the very top of the prep sheet so they know what finger pattern they're in. Now, I do this with the younger students. I tend to use more of these finger pattern examples. The more advanced the player, the less they rely on finger patterns, but I still think it's very helpful for students to kind of see visually where their fingers need to fall. So the first one you can see there is a G harmonic minor scale pattern, and it's only giving it on the G and D string because maybe this piece only worked mostly on that, or maybe that was the new material at the time. And then the other one is a G major pattern on the cello, and it looks like we don't even use the C string, but maybe we go to fourth position here in this piece on the cello for that E, F sharp, G on the A string. So you can see some examples. I made the one in the gray for cello, I know I made in paint. I don't remember where I made the one on the left or where I got that one from, but you can definitely make these really quickly and easily in any of your Google products or in Microsoft Paint, or you can just draw lines, or you can just draw it by hand, really easy. I like to color code, whatever works for you. Next up are some pitch patterns. This is where you isolate some of the more difficult finger pattern or pitch patterns in the piece of music through all the different sections. So for example, the first violins may never play pattern 10 in the piece, but maybe that's a pattern from the cello part. And so this is from Brandenburg 5, the Isaac arrangement. So these are 12 patterns that I identified as more tricky for one section or another. But everyone in the orchestra has these on their prep sheet. So I'll say, okay, look at your prep sheet, go to pattern 7 today. So we'll work on the D, E, F sharp, G sharp pattern. Now this is particularly tricky because this is an extension pattern for cellos on the D string. So, and for bass, D, E, F sharp, and then G sharp. Okay, well that's a pattern where they have to go back to half position on open G to get the G sharp. And so great way to check everybody. Violin and viola, that's a pretty easy extended 3 pattern. But again, we're doing it all together all at the same time. Pattern 10 is a trickier one for violins and violas and cellos. Well, everybody really, because we don't really play G sharp that often on the open G in the first couple of years of playing. So again, we're looking at what are the more difficult patterns. Pattern 12 is a tricky one, but I may say, okay, today we're going to play pattern 1. Let's do it 4 times. Ready, go, and we can repeat them, or we can play pattern 1, 2, and 3. We can do any combination of these pitch patterns. Next up, we'll have the scale. Usually I'll have the scale at the top with the finger pattern. I'll have the pitch patterns further down. So it'll usually have the finger pattern at the top, then the scale that we're on. This is the G harmonic minor scale in half position. You can see for bass, and it gives this particular one doesn't, you can see how it goes up and goes E flat in half position, and then the F sharp with the 4, and then open G. So this one gives the basses the finger pattern, or the finger number underneath, as well as then the actual scale. I like giving them the scale though written out, especially a scale like harmonic minor. They can actually see why it's harmonic minor with the raised 7th there. Really helpful. Next up are themes and melodies. So I'll extract the most common themes or melodies, and maybe 1 or 2. I don't tend to do more than that, but the most important or the most difficult theme or melody, and I'll grab those out. This is again Brandenburg 5, I believe. So you'll see it's written out. The first one is from the cello prep sheet. The second one I clipped out of the viola prep sheet. But every instrument has both these melodies written out, and we'll do them together. The great thing is, again, there's strength in everybody being in unison. Everybody feels like they're getting an important part by getting to play the melody. And we're getting more and more repetition on these trickier parts. I also like this because you can emphasize, okay, how you want these détaché accents played, because that does appear later on in the piece for other instrument sections. So getting that style down really early on before you even really put it in the music. Rhythmic patterns, this is another great one I like to have in there. So usually I'll have the, the finger pattern, the scale, then maybe I'll do the pitch patterns, then maybe some melodies, and then some rhythmic patterns. The rhythm patterns I love because you can quickly teach rhythms very, very easily to a whole group. You'll see they're all on the same pitch, so I take out the pitch factor in this case so that we can just focus on the rhythm. I love this because I can say, okay, go to rhythm 1 on your prep sheet. I think the numbers are not in this particular example on top there, but we'll say that first 3-2 measure is rhythm 1, the next one's rhythm 2. okay, we'll work on rhythm 1. Let's all do it together. We'll write it out. We'll write in the counting, and then we can mix it up. We can do all kinds of things to those rhythms. And you can see the second set of rhythm measures are from Brandenburg again. That first set is from Orion and the Scorpion, which is like a level 5 piece. Really tricky New World piece. Really hard rhythms. When kids first encounter those, they get freaked out. But if we do them in the context of this prep sheet, oh, so much easier because it's familiar territory. They already know how to address it and count it. It doesn't freak them out so much when we go to jump into the music with it. Symbols, notation terms. So this is one I clipped from a prep sheet that somebody gave me for a piece. I don't even remember what piece now. But this is musical notation. So these are all the musical terms and notation that are in the piece that they're going to encounter. It has allegro. It has, this one had a DSL coda, and it has all the symbols there. It had all their dynamics. So the whole range, this particular piece ran all the way from 2Ps to 2Fs. It had the crescendo and decrescendo, and I'll put these in their prep sheets. So I think prep sheets are a great way to really get your students focused in on their warm-up time. It really takes the prepping of the music and puts it all together in a unison form. It's a great way to teach some tricky stuff all at one time and not leave any section behind, to let everybody get a chance at the melody. And I think in general, warm-up time is probably one of my favorite times of the lesson. I would rather spend more time on my fundamentals in warm-up before I jump into music, because what we do in warm-up time directly influences what our students are actually able to do in the music. So I would love to hear how you're engaging your students in warm-up, some of your favorite warm-ups. If you do prep sheets, if you could share some of your examples in our group discussion post, that would be awesome to see what you do and your experience with that. And I look forward to hearing from you in our discussion post. So thank you so much, and we hopefully can talk some more about this in our chat.